My goal today is to talk about OCI data catalog. And what I'm going to do today is two things. One is introduce you with the concept of data catalog, what we're trying to build, and what problems we are trying to help customers with, and also do a short demo. And I know it's a 45-minute session, so we'll try to do that. I will show you what we have today, that we can get a sense of what you can use it for today. And then if we get a chance, I will go a little bit into roadmap also. But if you have any questions, you can probably put that in Q&A. And towards the end, I'll try to answer those questions as well. So this is a new service, and there is a lot that we are doing with this service that is, we have big plans, lots of investment that is going on in this service. So there is roadmap type items that I'll be talking about. So just want to be sure. I will try to make sure that I will actually distinguish what is available today versus what is in future. Quick agenda. We'll go through why we need data catalog. What are the use cases that we are trying to solve today? What is there in the current release? A quick demo, and then towards the end, if we get time, we will do a roadmap slide or two. And then the slide actually deck also has some additional assets that you can publicly view that will be helpful to understand what we are trying to do. Okay, so let's start with the problem statements. So why do we need catalog in the first place? There are three distinct aspects of problem statements that we're trying to solve. One is analytics related. And the idea here is that we want to be self-service analytics. We want to promote self-service analytics. But if you can't find the right data, then that becomes a problem in actually trying to achieve the goals of self-service. And that's why the ability for analysts and scientists to be able to find data, understand more about what this data is about, how to use it, is very important. They can't rely on asking around and relying on people's tribal knowledge, so-called tribal knowledge, on understanding what this data is about, and then trying to make sense of it, right? And if they have any issues, they don't know what to do about it because the information about the data is not available. So metadata is not available. So essentially, we are trying to solve that metadata management problem from analytics perspective. The second aspect of what problems we are trying to solve is for data lakes. And data lakes have lots of data in them, but in most cases, they are just files that are practically dumped there by a variety of systems or people. But there is no data dictionary in the sense that there is no interpretation or abstraction on top of it that can easily be used for querying. And even if you wanted to do that, you might be familiar with the big data SQL or cloud SQL services that we have. What you have to do, actually, you have to define that schema manually, and that is error prone and obviously laborious. So, and once you do that, even that, it's not very easy to share. So the idea is to, if we had a central place where we can share the metadata and abstraction on top of the data lake, that will be very useful. So that's what the second area of problem statements we're trying to solve. And the third is that when you talk about data lake or data warehouse or otherwise in general overall ecosystem, there is always the need for data governance. Now, data governance can be a very big topic. It can include a lot of things, but there are specific aspects of data governance that we are trying to solve with data catalog. So the idea here is that, when it comes to data governance, of course, in order to govern, you need to have overall visibility. So catalog can provide that visibility for the Oracle ecosystem that we are trying to build, right? It can help with understanding who the data owners are. It can help understand or collaborate when there are data issues, because data provider and data consumers can actually interact. And then in general, if you want to govern data, you also have to have a common understanding of business concepts. So data catalog can help managing that business glossary so to support data governance. So those are the three main areas that from vision perspective, we are trying to address. Now, this service is fairly new, a few months old. So we are still working on building out a lot of features related to all these problem statements. But let me just quickly talk about what are the use cases that we are supporting today, right? So the use cases that we are supporting today with OCI Data Catalog are ability to find data that could be across OCI or on-prem Oracle systems. Okay, and I want to be very specific about that. Currently, the scope is Oracle data sources. So whether it's ADB or Object Store or Oracle database or MySQL database, on-prem or OCI, right? We support those. We can get metadata about those systems. And eventually the goal would be to expand that scope of harvesting metadata. But currently we basically can connect to these systems, and I'll show you in the demo how it actually looks. And then we also have a proper managed business glossary that can be used to collect business concepts and manage business concepts. And then also you can associate those business concepts and tags so that you can actually enrich the metadata that you have collected for all the different sources that we talked about earlier. So in general, the scope is Oracle Cloud and on-prem sources, right? Data sources especially. And then the features and functions are related to search and discovery and business glossary on top of that. So that's the scope. But how does it fit in the overall platform? So as you know, and you might have seen this picture before, there are variety of different services in OCI platform and on-prem as well. And data catalogs goal is to actually be in the middle of all of it so that it can collect metadata from different systems and also push metadata back to those systems if those systems require certain metadata, right? So from a pure overall components perspective of a platform, data catalog attempts to interact with all of those systems. Currently, it interacts with certain data sources only, but the vision going forward in future is to be able to interact with all of those systems. And if we get time, I'll talk about that a little bit towards the end of this session. Right? So that's how it fits in the overall data platform. Now, like I said earlier, we launched the service a few months ago in February, and now it is live in all 18 commercial regions. And it is important to note that the current capabilities are available at no cost. And what I mean by that is that today you can log into your OCI tenancy as a customer and start using the catalog, and there'll be no cost to you. All of the cost of hosting, managing, operating the service is actually borne by us, Oracle. Nothing actually is charged to you because of the data catalog usage. So if you want to try it out, you want to take it for a spin, do a pilot, do a POC, absolutely go ahead and try that. I'll show you how to access that in OCI console, but it's available to you at no cost for current capabilities. Okay, and why is it actually currently available at no cost? So our goal, from data catalog perspective, is to support Oracle ecosystem, right? This is a ecosystem first data catalog, like we call it. The goal is for the catalog to help our Oracle customers gain more value out of their investments that they have in Oracle Cloud, especially, and on-prem, and enable more and more usage of those assets that they have already acquired. Catalog can enable that by providing the metadata management service around it, and that's why we believe that it's a critical technology piece, critical component of the overall ecosystem, and currently we have made it free so that you can start using it. And like I said earlier, it already supports a variety of different sources on OCI Cloud, Oracle Cloud, as well as on-prem, and you can start using it for harvesting data from those sources. Right. So here is a summary. Like I said, there are 4 or 5 different types of pillars, I would call them, for current capabilities. We can harvest metadata so that we can build this inventory, right? In order to build a data asset inventory, we need to harvest metadata from different systems. So Object Store, Autonomous Database, Oracle DB, MySQL, Hive, Kafka, on OCI as well as on-prem is supported. Once you have collected that metadata, you want to add more enrichments to it, what we are calling metadata curation. So you can actually build a glossary. I will show you a demo of that, as well as you can actually add free-form tags to these different technical assets so that you can enrich metadata and collect more business concepts around it, right? And once you have built that knowledge base of technical and business metadata, then you can do search and browse. So you can just do a search and say, okay, where are all my data related to customers? Type in customer and it will show you all the data assets related to customer. And you can use the technical names, or you can use business terms, you can use tags to search, right? And if you feel like, oh, I don't want to do search, I want to just do a browse because I know where things land or are already located, you can just do like a hierarchical browse as well. So those are the kind of feature functions from end user perspective. But what we're also trying to say is that this catalog is ecosystem catalog, so to speak. It is optimized for Oracle Cloud. It actually is built as a native OCI service. So it inherits all the security and scalability and performance characteristics of OCI, the SLAs of OCI, right? As a design principle, we have REST APIs and SDKs available. So anything that I'll show you in the catalog today in the user interface is available to you via SDKs and REST APIs. So you can actually embed some of these capabilities into your applications or other services that you might be using. And then from security perspective, it actually uses the IAM-based policy management framework, which you might be aware of if you have used OCI, but you can actually set up policies to say, okay, this part of the capability or this part of the data asset hierarchy is visible to only this group or that group, and these users can only do this activity versus that, right? So there is ways to set up policies for data catalog as well, and you can use that IAM-based policy management framework to enforce those policies. And just to repeat, current capabilities are available at no cost, and you can try it out and start deploying it in your production environment if you need to. So that's the current scope of capabilities. And these are just some screenshots. I'll walk through them just so that you have a visual. But in a minute here, I will actually do a live demo that way you can see firsthand how the product looks and what it can do. So that was the earlier slide was about harvesting. This is about business class rate metadata curation. This is about search and browse capabilities. And then the overall environment that we have for landing page, home page, etc. in OCI console, and then various aspects of this being an optimized for Oracle Cloud, right? A ecosystem catalog capability that we are building. So with that, I will jump into a live demo. Okay. All right. So like I said earlier, this particular capability is a OCI native service, which means that in order to log into or in order to use this capability, you have to log in to OCI console. So here is my demo environment. I'm going to log into my tenancy. All right. I hope my internet connection is holding up here. Maybe I'll shut off the video. Okay. Let's try it again. All right. I think I had timed out or something like that. So let me try again. Okay. So this is the OCI console that we all hopefully are familiar with, and data catalog actually lives under what we call as data and AI services. So as you can see here, Oracle Cloud obviously has lots of services, and if you haven't looked at Oracle Cloud in recent days or weeks, definitely keep checking it out because we constantly release new services. So definitely a long list of services and sub-services here. But data catalog appears under what we call as data and AI services. And as you can see, there is additional services here that probably there are sessions that you attended as well. So data catalog, let's go there. So data catalog actually is a resource, an OCI resource. So if you are trying to do it for the first time, all you do is just click, and it's literally that. You just create a catalog, name it, whatever you want, and just create one. Now, in this case, it's going to actually not let me do that because there is a limit on number of catalogs, 2 catalogs that you have today, and already created 2. That's why it does not allow me, but it literally takes few seconds to have the catalog up and running for you. In the background, everything is already provisioned for you, and you can start using it. So when you're doing it for the first time, obviously, brand new catalog, you will not have much of the content. But for the purpose of demo, what I have done is I have actually created a lot of content demo environment so that I can show you different features and functions, right? So let me just kind of close. I have been doing lots of demos, so let me close all of these tabs so that I can start fresh. So this is the just increase this as well. Okay, this is the landing page of data catalog, and as you can see, for the from the user experience perspective, we think that discovery of data, finding things that are interesting to you across the ecosystem is one of the primary use cases. So you have a pretty prominent search box here, and you can just come here and start searching for things that you have in the catalog as a data consumer. But before we go into all of that, let me just kind of walk through some of the basic concepts. So there is a concept of data assets, which are essentially sources of metadata. So it could be Oracle database, it could be ADB, it could be MySQL, it could be object store endpoint and whatnot. So these are the data assets that you basically connect to and harvest metadata from. So basically, we'll go out to those systems and then collect metadata from those systems and bring them back to the catalog. The second concept is data entities, which is like a table, if you will, or a file in object store, right? So it's basically that kind of data entity. And then attributes are essentially columns. And then business glossary, like I mentioned earlier, is a collection of business concepts. I'll show you that as part of the demo, and so on. And then on the home page, you also have some distribution, like how many assets do I have that I have harvested of different types, and then some quick actions and recently worked assets, etc. But then there is also this what we call as tag cloud. So as I mentioned earlier, there's this notion of tags in data catalog, which you can just add to any technical assets that you have, and that can be then used for search and discovery. So let me just kind of make up an example here for the purpose of demo. Imagine that there has been a lot of harvesting that has been already done, and users are actually tagging actively these things so that they can say, oh, some of this actually is about sales, some of this is about actually marketing, and so on. So let's say I'm a user and I want to find things related to sales, and I can just click on this popular tag called sales, and it brings back all the different technical data sets that are about sales, that people have said are about sales, right? So as you can see here, there's a few that appear here. There's some from Oracle, some from MySQL, some from Object Store, and so on. So the idea is this, right? That could you have found this information otherwise? Yes, you could go to the SQL developer, connect to 5 different systems, and one by one find out if they are there or not, right? You could go to Object Store and log into your OCI console and do some research on your own and find out, okay, is there something that is related to sales here? But that's not very efficient, and that's not very easy for casual users like data analysts and data scientists. So data catalog gives you that single place, right? You can come in here and manage all that information as metadata inventory so that then it can become very easy for consumers of data to find things. So that's what I did here. So of course, there has been some work that is done in the background, but this is the resultant. This is how customers actually, or end users actually will consume the metadata that we have collected in the catalog. So you might say, okay, I only care about Oracle database, right? So let me just look at what we have in different Oracle databases. By the way, this need not be only one database. It could be multiple databases that you have connected to, and information is coming back. So you could say, oh, let's look at this. There is a revenue table here. I'm interested in that. Let me see. So you open it up, and now it starts showing you the details of that. What schema does it belong to? What database it belongs to, right? What kind of attributes does it have? And then you can drill down into attributes and say, oh, you know what? Let me see what this order status is about, right? And it will show you, okay, okay, this is a varchar, and this is the overall path and nullable and all that, right? So the idea is for you to be able to come in here and learn as an end user, data consumer, is this something that is suitable for your use case or not? You might say, oh, you know what, what are the kinds of keys does it have? So let me look at all the keys, and now it is going to show you all the keys. Oh, is there something related to customer here? Let me just search for, something related to cust here. What kind of information? Oh, there is a customer key. Great, right? So it helps you quickly understand what's in there. So that's the main value proposition of the having a single place to come in and start trying that, right? So that's the technical aspect or technical information aspect of what the catalog can help you do, right? What you can also do actually is what we are calling the tagging, right? So you could say, I know that this is about sales, right? Somebody actually has already tagged this with sales. Somebody else actually also tagged it with sensitive. It makes sense. This is revenue information. It could be sensitive. And somebody might say, you know what? Actually, it can be used as a reference data as well for whatever reason. I'm just making example here. But you as a subject matter expert, or you as a provider of this data set, could actually qualify these things, and then this can be used by consumers to understand more about the data. Oh, okay, I can use it for reference data as well, so on and so forth. So that helps, collecting that tribal knowledge, and that can be done, by the way, not only at the table level. You can actually even do it at the column level, right? And you can say, okay, where is the cust key? I had that cust key earlier, right? So I could look at that cust key, right? And I could add a tag here if I wanted to. Oh, this is also maybe a reference data, right? And I can keep creating such additional metadata about this and add my knowledge about it, right? So that is very helpful. Then the other aspect that you can also do is link terms, right? So for example, this particular column is actually a representation of a business concept, let's say called customer ID. How would you capture that information? So we have this notion of linking terms. And what are these terms? These terms are what we call as glossary terms. And I'll go into details of what a glossary is. But the idea is that this glossary is essentially a collection of variety of different business concepts. So what is a customer ID? What is address? What is an application? What is bond? Like, depending on what your domain is, you could actually define these concepts so that everybody has the same understanding. So when I say customer ID, everybody thinks, oh, okay, I know what that means from a concept perspective, right? Or if I say, oh, I am an OCI service and I'm talking about compute, like what does it actually mean? What does compute service really mean? Okay, here is an example. Here is the description of what that compute is. I'm talking about, let's say, collateralized debt obligation. What does that actually mean? I could actually figure out that and actually, understand what that is, right? Oh, sorry. So the idea is to collect all that information and then link that to physical technical assets, right? So you could say, okay, this is this is an attribute called cust key, and I'm going to actually tie it to, let's see, customer ID. Is there customer ID here? Hopefully, no. Okay, I don't have a customer ID here, but maybe I can just put it to customer full name or something like that, right? But the idea is that I can now link such terms to my keys or my technical objects and give you a holistic view. So for example, in this particular case for revenue, if I go back to the table here, I can see that I had already linked a term called revenue, total revenue to it. And I could click here and say, oh, you know what, this is what total revenue means. So now I actually have understanding of all the different technical aspects of it, some of the free-form tags, and also the formal business concept around it. And I can get a more holistic view. Or if I wanted to actually see the details of total revenue, what is it about? I can actually launch into this business glossary environment that actually collects all this information in a hierarchical manner. So what we're doing here now is, as you can see, there is this sample glossary. It has categories of, called order or product or customer, and also subcategories called address. And here we are defining what does total revenue mean. And in my case, I just copy pasted stuff off the internet. But if you are trying to build your own glossary, you would actually define this, collaborate with other stakeholders and define this and say, okay, this is what we all agree on as a concept for total revenue, right? And if you don't like this term, you could actually go ahead and edit it if you have the permission to do so according to the policies. And as you can see, it's a rich text form, so you can actually do all kinds of things in terms of formatting and whatnot. I'm just doing something here, but it doesn't matter. And you can also do things like putting a user as a owner. So you could say, okay, Claudia is going to be the owner of this business concept. If somebody has any questions, they can come in here and talk to Claudia. Or they could also say, okay, now that we have talked about this term, we are all agreeing that this is how it is to be defined. We call it approved, and now it becomes a approved business concept that can then be used. Right? So that is very helpful in many cases. That is an essential part of governance. So while this does not provide you all of the governance capabilities, the catalog actually does give you some of the pieces of the puzzle when it comes to governance. So that's one concept of glossary in terms of how you can use it. Then there are other notions like linked terms and linked objects. So let me show you an example of linked term. So for example, let's say you have a term called full name, but then you could actually create relationships with other terms. In this case, for example, middle name, family name, given name, and you can say, oh, these terms are related, and here is how they're related. In this case, they are related as a parent-child relationship. So that becomes useful also to build kind of a taxonomy of all the different terms that you may have. And then finally, there is an idea of linked objects. So earlier we saw how you can link a technical asset to business concept. Now you come to business concept and you can see, oh, okay, what are all the different physical tables or views or whatever that are related or linked to this particular business concept called total revenue. And now we can see that there is revenue that we saw earlier, there's revenue targets, there's revenue detail, and so on. And you can keep on exploring more and more as to what this view is now about. And you can then say, oh, you know what, maybe this is a better view. Maybe this is what I wanted to use instead of that raw table, and maybe I'll use this one. But as you can see, by having this catalog where all information is collected and connected from technical as well as business perspective, can help you find things quickly. That is how we are supporting the first use case of finding and exploring data across a variety of different data sources. So that's how a consumer would actually work with the catalog. But you might wonder, well, where did all this come from? Is it all a live query to the actual actual source system? No. What we have, as I mentioned earlier, is a notion of data assets. So data assets are nothing but systems that we are connecting to for the purpose of harvesting metadata. So as you can see, we have created assets for Kafka and Hive and MySQL and Object Store and Oracle database and so on. So what you do is basically, as a semi-technical person who understands how to configure a database and all that, what you can do is that you can create a data asset and name it, and choose a type, like, okay, I want to harvest this Oracle database, or I want to harvest this ADW instance, or this MySQL, or this object store. And you can choose that, and depending on what you choose, you'll be asked additional questions. As you can imagine, postcode database, and then obviously you'll have to create give the connection information like username, password, and all that. But anyhow, that's how you construct the data asset, and then you harvest it. So one other thing that you'll see here is that this notion of private endpoint. So this actually helps us harvest metadata from private IPs. So the idea is that if you have an Oracle database that is behind your firewall, or if you have, let's say, an ADW instance that is behind private IP, you need a special tunnel, if you will, a network tunnel, to be able to connect those. So you, as a network administrator or a tenancy administrator in OCI, can set up what we call as private endpoints, and then there is a lot of details about how to set up that, how to create the subnets, how to create the DHCP options, how to do DNS resolvers, and all that good stuff. So a network engineer will be able to set that up. But once that is set up, the data catalog has a tunnel that it can go through to reach those systems and harvest metadata from. So if you have on-prem systems, just know that that is supported. And for that, you have to actually create a private endpoint and use that while harvesting the metadata. So let me now show you how the harvesting process looks like. So for example, here we have a data asset for Oracle database that we have already created. And it is actually a public IP, so it is not using the private endpoint capability. It is a public IP. And what you can do is that you can basically create a connection that I already created, and make sure that it's tested and it's successful. Yeah, it's successful. And then what you do is what we call as a process of harvesting. So in the process of harvesting, you basically connect to the system using a connection, and then you get to choose which schemas or tables you want to actually harvest metadata from, because you might have lots of system schemas, system tables and all that, and maybe that is all not interesting to you. You might want to only do certain stuff. So you might say, I want to only do specific schemas. So you could say, okay, I want to do DCAT1, DCAT2, or maybe not DCAT2, just DCAT test, whatever, right? And within DCAT2, I only want to do certain things. So you can actually choose what you want to harvest so that you don't bring a lot of noise unnecessarily into the catalog. And then once you have chosen, you create a job. So as you can imagine, the harvesting process can take a long time depending on what you selected and what the type of source it is, right? When it is actually object store, we connect to the object store and we parse the files that are in there. So that might take a long time. So because of that, we create this batch process, asynchronous process behind the scenes, a harvesting job that either can be run right away, right? Or it can be scheduled to run later. And you can make it like, okay, I know that I get fresh data from my third-party providers every Wednesday or every whatever, right? Every hour or whatever, every day, whatever. I can set that frequency and then make sure that it actually gets harvested, and so that my data catalog is up to date with the latest information. So you can set that up and execute that job. So for this purpose, maybe I'll just create a job, right? And execute it right now. So we created this job, and now we're executing that job. So if you're an administrator of a catalog administrator, right, you will actually have this view for all the different jobs that are running as well, or whatever you have created in the past, etc. And you can drill down into it and understand. Okay, maybe there's this LA. Okay, I just created that, so it's just finished already. So here is the status, and you can see, okay, I had selected some schemas that didn't have any entities there. But if you were to look at, let's say, let me just open up another job, right? Something like, let's say TST. I don't know if it has anything, but it could actually give you, it will give you the information like, okay, I harvested 34 entities. It took me 11 seconds and so on. But you can actually see, what was the job and what it actually did. And once you are done with that, you can actually go in here and then look at the data entities, right? So here are all the data entities that we have harvested. You can refresh if you wanted to. And then again, do simple stuff like, okay, all the things that are with staff or all the things with cust and so on, right? And you can just do some kind of sanity testing and make sure that you got all the information that you needed. But that is how you will go about actually creating and harvesting metadata. And as you can see here, I have variety of different types here, MySQL object store and so on. So let's say maybe you want to look at the object store. I'll just show you that. So here is the information about all the things that we have collected from there. So of course, it does the databases like Oracle database, ADW, ATP, MySQL, etc., Hive, etc. But it also does like files. So for example, here there's a file in this particular bucket, and we can actually open that up and see that, okay, it is a file, CSV type, and actually it has 41 attributes and all these different attributes, and we can introspect those as well. So there is there is parsing that is also happening for these different files that you can actually look at. So in general, right, this gives you a very, very, very quick way of actually looking at all the files, and you can see Avro, Parquet, JSON, all kinds of files are actually supported. So you can actually understand all these different files and what are in there. And there is parsing involved. So you don't have to actually look at these things manually, and you can actually know what's in the data lake. So that's a big deal, because now you can actually understand contents of the data lake much better than just files. So that's the notion of harvesting that we have. So that is like a very, very, very quick demo of what a data catalog does. There is many more things that you can do here that I don't have time to actually go through all, but I will take a quick look at Q&A section here if there are any questions here. No open questions. Okay. So if with that, what I'll do is actually I shall switch to my slide deck. If you have any questions, feel free to put it on Q&A channel. But with that quick demo, I will now stop sharing my browser and go back to PowerPoint. And I'll talk about a little bit what is coming in future. Okay, so I think we looked at all of that already. Okay, so just to summarize what I showed you earlier, we can find data in the Oracle ecosystem, as you saw, harvesting, inventorying, and searching the data, right? And both cloud and on-premises. We can manage business glossary and do tagging, etc. And then also do, this is all actually optimized for Oracle Cloud, which means that it's all sitting on Oracle Cloud and current capabilities at no cost. So that's the current state, right? Now let's quickly look at what we are thinking of in future. So like I mentioned earlier, the goal of the catalog is to help customers gain more and more value out of their investments in Oracle in general or in Oracle ecosystem. So we are going to actually integrate data catalog metadata capabilities into other Oracle Cloud services. So imagine, Oracle Analytics Cloud, right? You are a data analyst or an end user who is trying to build reports or read reports, right? And you want to understand where did this data come from? We might actually be able to show you the data lineage by integrating that capability into OAC. Or maybe you are just trying to find things that are not in the OAC environment yet. Search that I just showed you could be very powerful to just find things that are out there in the ecosystem, right? So the goal is to actually integrate data catalog capabilities into the OAC, and then data integration and data science, and so on and so forth, any data flow, right? So there are many different services that can benefit from having these metadata capabilities, either in the form of search and discovery or recommendations. Since we're actually collecting a lot of metadata, we can actually recommend these different services, different things to do for their end users. So that becomes very big value addition to those systems. So that's the goal. Basically, create a search and discovery environment for all cloud services and provide that either directly in the catalog or also as part of their experience of those specific services. So that is one thing that we are going to look at in future. The other is that Metastore for data lake. So like I mentioned earlier, if you don't have a already understood schema for data lakes, it becomes very hard. So we are actually trying to build a Metastore, a persistent Metastore that can be used with ADB Cloud SQL as well as OCI data flow, so that for those users, they don't have to define the schema. Data catalog is already harvesting. Data catalog is already understanding what's in the object store. So we can actually help those systems define external tables and whatever schema definition that they need, so that the manual process is eliminated and the table is just there. So we want to integrate with those systems so that the knowledge that we're collecting about data lake can be translated into something meaningful to the ADB, Cloud SQL, and OCI data flow users. And then in general, when it comes to governance and visibility and holistic view, data profiling and data lineage is very important. So those are some of the concepts that we'll be also introducing in future in terms of use cases. So in short, what I would say is that basically, and I'm going to actually just skip this slide because I don't have a lot of time, but in short, here is like one slide I generally want to like to show in terms of what we are thinking. All the capabilities that we're trying to build here, profiling, lineage, recommendations, right? Sensitive data proliferation, and so on. We want to bring those capabilities, but those capabilities will be built using harvesting from a variety of different sources. As you can see here, all the different data sources as well as applications and services here that will collect metadata from, including, by the way, third-party sources like JDBC-based sources, or even third-party data catalogs. We will be able to exchange metadata from them and then provide all these different capabilities to the consuming services that you see here in the top: Cloud SQL, Oracle Apps, Streaming, OAC, and so on. And if third-party catalogs or apps wanted to use our metadata, that would be possible via our REST APIs and metadata as a service. So the goal is to be focusing on Oracle ecosystem so that we can add value to all the different services that are part of the Oracle ecosystem, whether Oracle Cloud or on-prem, and then when and if needed, interact with third-party catalogs to then exchange metadata via a bridge, so to speak. So that's kind of a very quick summary and overall view of what we are trying to do with data catalog. Here are some additional assets. If you just did Google on OCI data catalog, you'll be able to find some of these things. There is a bunch of blogs and obviously documentation and whatnot available on our oracle.com website. Feel free to browse that, take a look at that. And like I said earlier, the service is free. So if you want to try it out, feel free to go to OCI console and start playing with it, start trying it out and give us some feedback. So with that, at 2:44, I think that concludes my session. Adele, I don't see any open questions, but do we have to open up for questions? Can people ask live questions?
Yes, people can ask questions, but in the meantime, if let me say that again in Spanish.
Sure.
Gente, si ustedes tienen alguna pregunta, por favor, pónganla en el botoncito de Q&A que tenemos en Zoom. In the meantime, I have questions.
Sure.
So, for example, I have been working with Oracle Enterprise Metadata Management. So there are some concepts like harvesting that it's quite similar. But the idea is not, this is not going to be like a replacing the cloud for OEMM,
that is correct.
Right?
That is correct.
It's just for cloud services only? Or they're going to be also harvesting some on-prem?
Yes, we will be harvesting on-prem sources, but we are Oracle ecosystem catalog first, which means that we will be harvesting Oracle systems first, and then we'll be also harvesting a few strategic non-Oracle systems, like maybe Microsoft or maybe AWS or something like that, based on customer demand. But really, our goal is to be very, very good at collecting and presenting metadata or managing metadata for Oracle ecosystem components, whether on-prem or cloud, doesn't matter. We'll do both for Oracle. But when it comes to non-Oracle systems, we will be limited.
Okay, but it's not going to be a replacement for
It is
OEMM.
Not going to be a replacement of OEMM. OEMM actually is a classic enterprise metadata management tool, whereas this is more of a cloud data catalog oriented towards Oracle ecosystem. So it's not the same scope. It's not the same use cases that we are trying to support.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
There is a question.
The question is how you can integrate the data catalog with Oracle in this cloud. Is there a way right now to do this integration?
So we actually are working on out-of-the-box integration with OAC, with data catalog. So stay tuned. I can't give you timelines on this yet, but definitely so. We are planning to integrate OAC, data science, and all the other services that you see. That is one of our primary actually consumption service for data catalog. So yes, we are planning to have that integration in a variety of ways, actually more than one ways. Yeah.
Perfecto, o sea que están los planes, pero todavía no está, pero están los planes para integrar. Perfect, so it's in the plans, it's in the roadmap, but it's not there yet. Basically.
It's not there yet, correct.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions, guys? He said, thank you so much. It was an excellent presentation. And I agree with him. I agree with Henry. Thank you so much. That was very, very useful. Thank you for joining us this year virtually, and hopefully after everything of this pass, we can have you here in the Latin American countries. Thank you so much, Abhiram. Muchas gracias a todos por participar. And vamos a compartir las slides y las grabaciones más adelante en nuestro canal de YouTube y en nuestro sitio de la UC. Thank you so much, Abhiram, again. Have a nice day.
Have a great day. Bye.
Bye-bye.